The future of Pro controllers looks a little janky right now, to say the least, but let me explain why. Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Zeppelin and welcome back to the channel. So today, as you've seen by the intro and the title of the video, I wanted to go in depth a little more on the topic of Pro controllers going forward as we are moving into the next generation of consoles. Now for this video, I'm going to stay primarily focused on PlayStation and the future of Pro controllers within PlayStation gaming, as Xbox pretty much has had it nailed ever since the Xbox Elite controller, which has been made so well that it's pretty much eliminated the competition for Xbox Pro controllers, and there's no real need to discuss it. The controller is probably going to come out for Xbox Series X if it hasn't already, and there is no real competition there. That controller will be there for the players who want it. This video is going to focus more on the PlayStation controllers. Now, PlayStation for a long time has relied on third-party companies to make their controllers. And what I mean by third-party companies is companies like SCUF or Battle Beaver, or then other officially licensed companies like Razer and Nacon have all dipped their hand into the pool of the Pro controllers for the PlayStation consumer, and they made these controllers primarily for the PlayStation 4. Razer created controllers that I have reviewed before and reviewed in brief on this channel, the Razer Raiju controllers, which, while with their problems, were personally, in my opinion, really good controllers. And of course, not enough praise can be heaped on controller companies such as SCUF and Battle Beaver, who have really developed the Pro controller market into what it is today, with some fantastic products throughout the PlayStation 4's lifespan. However, many other companies have purchased the Sony license to make Pro controllers, and it did not work out so well for them, in my opinion. Now, I have not reviewed all of these controllers, but I have played with a lot of them in brief. And one thing that was apparent with the Pro controller market, as I'm sure many of you will know who has ever bought a Pro controller, is that so many of the controllers came with minute problems, which for the average consumer would not have been too much of an issue. But for someone who was buying a Pro controller looking for that competitive edge, it was the problems that were coming with the controller were clear enough that the controller would have needed replaced. I'm talking things such as stick drift and triggers not working the way they should. Stick drift has been a huge problem for a lot of people buying controllers for any console over the years, but the Pro controllers seem to have really bad stick drift in comparison to Sony made controllers. One of the big criticisms that could be levied at Sony themselves is that rather than spending the money at making Pro controllers themselves, they were selling out the license to make Pro controllers for the PlayStation console to third parties who were not taking as much care with the internals of the controller, leading to far more breakage. Now, even in my brief time as a competitive player, I noticed a bundle of problems with the many different controllers that I reviewed, and coming from a background where money was not exactly thrown at me that I could spend at these controllers, when you would spend nearly £200 on a controller and it came with issues, it would leave you pretty vexed, to say the least. However, despite all these problems and mainly focusing on the positives here, when these controllers worked, they worked so well. And once you learned how to use them and got used to using them, they were such a step up in gaming and gave a real competitive edge to anyone who'd be playing first-person shooters or fighting games, although fighting games was not really my area of expertise. Now, as we were coming to the end of the PlayStation 4 cycle, Sony decided that they were going to release a back button attachment for the DualShock 4 controller. A lot of eyebrows were raised by various different content creators and reviewers on YouTube as to why Sony were making a back button attachment so close to the PS5's expected release date. Many people thought that this was Sony merely trying to have some sort of cash grab on the last gen before the next gen came out, but others presumed that maybe this was testing the waters to see how well this product would do so that they could release a similar product on the DualSense controller when that came out with the PlayStation 5. When this back button attachment came out, I think it was only for around £40 new, which completely blew every other Pro controller out of the water in terms of pricing. Like your average Pro controller from any other company was going to easily cost you £150, and with this back button attachment being just £40, it was something that was offered to the average consumer. When this back button attachment came out, it done so well, phenomenally well. They were sold out everywhere and scalpers were buying them and relisting them on eBay for £80 or £90. They were phenomenal and worked perfectly with the reliable DualShock 4 controller. For anyone who didn't have any money to be throwing at these high-end controllers, this was the perfect option to get involved in the competitive world, and the back button attachments were actually more comfortable than many of the other Pro controllers that I had tried. I mean, other companies tried to do so much different with Pro controllers, such as the Thrustmaster controller or the awful Nacon controllers, in my opinion, where the grip on them was wrong, the controller feel was wrong, and the back buttons just did not feel right to use. This back button attachment for the DualShock 4 had nice, clicky, tactile feeling buttons that worked to a treat, and in my brief time in using it I encountered no problems, and I can see why they sold out so quickly. Unfortunately though, these buttons could not be used on the DualSense, which again makes a lot of people question why Sony released these back button attachments so close to the PS5 release date. It is very possible that this was a cash grab. However, I am going to choose to look on the lighter and brighter side of this and say that they were testing the waters, and if this was something that they were doing to see if people were interested in the product, then they should be able to see now that there is a clear interest and market for this type of product. However, we are currently sitting at the beginning of January in 2021 and we have still not heard a single word about any sort of back button attachment or Pro controller variant coming out for the PlayStation 5, not just from Sony, but from any other company such as Scuf or Razer, with the exception of Battle Beaver, but they are a smaller company who are making the controllers off their own backs rather than having them officially licensed. Which leaves the question that I posed in this video: what is the future of Pro controllers going to be like, or is there even going to be a future for Pro controllers? In my opinion, I'm not so sure there will be. This year we saw many changes in competitive gaming going forward, one of the biggest changes being that Call of Duty have decided to go on to PC. Now, while you still have to use a controller on the PC playing Call of Duty, this is going to lead to a big change up for a lot of people when it comes to buying products for competitive gaming, which is what Pro controllers were for. People on PC could now simply get the Xbox controllers, or probably even use the old Scuf controllers, without really needing to invest in newer Pro controller equipment. The old works just fine in that case. For example, for me personally, when I was 16, 17 years old, originally getting into the competitive gaming scene in Call of Duty, having a Pro controller on the official console that the competitive gaming was on was very important to me. But now when people are looking at buying Pro controllers for their PS5 and see that the Call of Duty competitive tournaments aren't even being played on PS5, they might be a little more reluctant to churn out such an amount of cash for a premium product. Now, while Sony may see that there is interest in the Pro controllers on the PlayStation 5 because of how well the back button attachments did on the PS4, the only reason the back button attachments did so well is because they were released at such a cheap price. Now, a lot of people have speculated for years that Sony were going to try and do something similar to what Xbox did with their Elite controllers and make their own proper controller with back button attachments and cancel out the third party. This of course would be detrimental to companies such as Scuf or Battle Beaver or Razer, but mainly Scuf, who specialize in making the Pro controllers for PlayStation. The fact that these companies are so reliant on making these controllers for PlayStation to stay afloat, it makes me wonder if Sony will actually make their own controller. And if they did make their own controller, is there really going to be such a market for it now? There may be a market for a cheap back button attachment, but in terms of a Pro controller, I don't see Sony, at the moment at least, seeing such an interest. And the fact that no announcements have come yet as to whether SCUF are making a Pro Controller or not, or whether Sony are going to make a Pro Controller, it makes me think, is there going to be a future for Pro Controllers at all? Or are we going to see a slow transition towards keyboard and mouse simply becoming the main across the board, for competitive gaming at least? I don't want to conclude this video by simply saying I don't know, because it feels like I may have dragged you along a little bit, but honestly the possibilities are still open, and I wanted to make this video just to list my opinions on Pro Controllers and where they can go in the future, and leave the answer up to you guys down in the comments. I want you to let me know where you think Pro Controllers are going to go in the future. Am I simply talking nonsense and within a year the Pro Controller business will excel? Or could it eventually die out? Or will it simply just sit in the middle, not growing or not shrinking, just being a niche premium controller market? So make sure you let me know your thoughts, and thank you very much for watching this video. And there will be other controller reviews coming to this channel, and there are some reviews up already of the Razer Raiju Ultimate, so make sure to go and look at those if you're interested in the Pro Controller market. And any Pro Controller that comes out in the PS5 in future, I will make sure to get my hands on and review for you guys. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.